Betverse makes things interesting by allowing you to make a living just by playing your favorite games. You can make anywhere from 1% to 1,000% return depending on the difficulty of the game.
So anyway, so this is a giant boondoggle. They don't want the UK government to build infrastructure, to build trains, to improve houses, to build nuclear power plants, to improve their shipping facilities. They don't want that.
Why?
And you ask why?
Yeah.
Why? Because basically, like, they want these countries to be begging for money. They want them destroyed so they can come in and loot them like vultures. They want people to be on their knees begging them for scraps of money they throw out. And I know this feeling because, you know, I've had presidents of countries that got hit by this virus, and they were tourist countries. And a lawyer calls me and he says, this president, he'll sell anything. They need money now. Like, there's countries where they need money to buy food, to import diesel fuel to run the generators. The electricity is going to get shut off in this country because 80% of their income was coming from tourism. And now they need money to buy diesel fuel and food, or they're going to have their electricity shut off and people are going to starve. And and this president is going to get thrown out of power. So you're an investor, you're this guy. They think you can buy up some oceanfront land. They think you can do a biofuel facility. They think you can build a hotel. They think, you know, they don't care what you do as long as you bring money. They say, tell us what you want. We'll sell it to you for whatever you know, and you say, oh, $200. You know, they don't even have a choice because their choice is to riots. We need money to buy food or we're going to starve. We need money to buy diesel fuel or electricity is getting shut off. And they don't have 80% of the money they had from tourism was cut off, like gone. And what are they going to do? So this is an apocalypse. It's worse than a hurricane coming in and like annihilating like half the buildings in the country. And that's what they want. If you're China, do you see China getting on their knees and begging the US for money?
No.
Do you see China going to the bankers and begging for a few, you know, a bailout? Do you see China on their knees asking the IMF for a bailout? China does whatever the hell they want. They want oil. They go into the Philippines. They take the island. Then the Philippines complains, and they have some guy fly over to the Philippines with suitcases full of cash and say, and then, here's your cash. So they say, well, those islands always belong to China. We sold them to them. And China gave a deal where, oh, give us the islands. We'll pump the oil and we'll sell the oil and give you 50% of the money. And here's some of the money up front. They had diplomats fly into the country with suitcases full of cash to pay them. And you want the money? You don't want, like, oh, money? I want money. That's what the Philippines said. So the Philippine government said, we made a deal with China. And the deal was China drills the oil and they give us some of the money, 50%. And they do all the work. And it goes in our pocket. And they were like, okay, great. And then after that, the US said that that China was violating the Philippines' national sovereignty. And the US government said, we don't care what the Philippines said. We decide whether or not they're violating it. It doesn't matter what agreement they made. We decide whether or not those islands belong to China, not the Philippines.
That would be typical of the US.
So these countries, you have to understand, like, if you have infrastructure, you control oil, you control resources, they can't steal and loot from you, right? So when Boris, he wants to do nuclear power, they're looking at, we're going to lose $100 billion on oil imports. You know, they went into South Africa, they destroyed the country. South Africa has not built a new power plant since the 1980s. They have to import massive amounts of diesel fuel. Their economy is destroyed. They don't have a nuclear program. They can't defend themselves. And they looted all the gold mines, all the silver mines, all the assets. Everything was for sale. And the worse the economy gets, the more these vultures make. The more the government has to sell to just, imagine you had some assets and they force you into poverty. And now you have to sell everything you own just to pay your next rent payment. And then the next rent payment comes and you have to sell today you sell your socks, tomorrow you sell your pants, the next day you sell your underwear. And they just keep doing this until you have nothing. So when China comes into the Africa and says, we're going to build you a power plant, we'll pay for it, we'll use our labor, we'll generate income, and we'll use the income to pay back the loan, and we're not going to charge you anything, the IMF gets pissed because there's competition. And I'm not saying that power plant built by China, there's going to be a lot of strings attached to that. It's not necessarily, it'd be better if the country printed up their own money and did it themselves, right? Rather than having China do it. But having China do it is better than getting into debt with the IMF, right? And dealing with these gangsters. So what they don't, so you have these people and they really don't want economic development. They don't want people building power plants. They don't want unemployment. And the other thing is they think that these countries should all compete to have the lowest price labor. When you build infrastructure, the price of labor goes up and they lose money. They have to move their Boeing plant from the US to Mexico. They have to, and in China, the government did this infrastructure program so well that all these factory owners have to move their factory from China to Vietnam or from China to Cambodia because the labor price is too high. So if you think about this and you're an international corporation and you want to keep labor prices low, you want to shut down power plants, you want to destroy infrastructures, you want to stop construction of new runways. So we think that everyone benefits if everyone gets richer and if wages go up and everyone has more money. And it's not actually true. This group gains and this group loses. So what we have actually, if you look straight down the line in terms of policy, there's one group that wants, of industrialists, that wants to print up money, build infrastructure. They want to, do this, do that. And this other group's going to lose if they do that. They want to keep the countries in debt. They want to do privatization. They want to loot everything they can. They want the government to be on their knees selling them assets. And the government actually has the ability to just print up money and fund all the infrastructure it needs. It doesn't have to go in debt to fund infrastructure. But they don't make money unless the government's taking loans from them. So if you look, Canada had an infrastructure bank funded by the government, and they shut it down. They got rid of it because they don't want them having free money to build infrastructure. They want them to be on their knees begging them for every project. So I don't think, so this is really, there's a divide of this side with Trump, this side with this group. And the Trump side is more of an industrialist side. They want this infrastructure spending. They want to nationalize the Federal Reserve. And this group over here is going to lose hundreds of trillions of dollars. The debt is going to be meaningless. If countries start acting like China and just start printing up money to fund the infrastructure development and fund employment and fund trains and railroads and building, stuff like that, then they would, then this group loses money on their loans and the bonds become meaningless. So I think realistically, this group wanted a crisis. They hold the debt and the country goes into crisis and they loot it. And if they nationalize the Federal Reserve and just print up money to buy up the debt, they can't loot these companies in bankruptcy. So even within the coronavirus bullshit, there were a lot of people that wanted the economic crisis to be much more severe than it was. So they're okay with giving $500 billion or $500 million to this vaccine manufacturer. They're not okay with the government bailing out their airline because they want that airline to go into bankruptcy. They want the hotels to go into bankruptcy so they can buy them out for pennies on the dollar. And so in Mauritius, the central bank came in and bailed out the debt of the hotels so they didn't go under. If the hotels went under, a bunch of people in Germany would come in and buy out all the hotels for 3 cents on the dollar. And the government didn't want that to happen. So they bailed out the airline and hotels and they started screaming and trying to overthrow the president and do a coup to get rid of him so they could do their looting operation. So you can make money building a country up and you can make money tearing it down. And
it sounds like Goldman Sachs, government by Goldman Sachs.
To Greece, this is what they did to Greece.
That's right. That is what they did to Greece, make money on the way up and make money on the way down.
So yeah, basically, there's a civil war going on in the United States, and a lot of it is for control over the Fed, where this $1 trillion is going, whose companies are going to get pumped. And honestly, there's one group that wants to do a new Green Deal. So they want to put all this $10 trillion a year and put it into infrastructure in companies that they own and things like that. And there's another group that wants to put up infrastructure. And basically, this is going to happen no matter whether you call it green or not green. And so in general, in our society, we are industrial chain. There's parts of it that have to be changed. And no one wants to really do that because everything's sort of running. They already invested the money and the reality though, not because of global warming, it's mostly bullshit, but the real issue is like heavy metal pollution. And the fact is you cannot support billions of people at the US standard of living with the current labor force, with the current production, with the current energy systems. So all of this bullshit with Trump, there's gonna be a civil war, whether it doesn't matter. What really matters is the technology that's coming into play. So in the future, in the next 20 or 30 years, we're going to be producing most of our food, most of our protein with bacterial fermentation. So there's going to be a biotech boom that's occurring right now. We're going to be 3D printing artificial organs. So your liver's bad, we just give you a new one. And the artificial organs can be engineered. They can be better than the original organs, right? And they're going to be patented, and they're going to do genetic engineering and things like that. And they're going to be able to replace most of the parts of the human body.
Sorry, Synth, hold on a second, right? Because you might understand this given where you are in China. So it seems to me all that stuff, the bioengineering, the foods from bacteria fermentation, manufactured organs, that's all on the mechanical world. What about the chi? Yeah, you can't chi, the life force.
So, so right now we grow
from Indian.
Yeah, right now we grow a cow, right?
Yeah.
And we have to feed it this and that. And we're gonna take a slab of the cell from the cow, and we're gonna produce a culture, and it's basically just a slab of cancer. And we feed it, and then the cancer goes whoop, and then the blade goes shoot, 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 and this blob of cancer comes out of the machine, and we chop it into steaks, and then we send it to the restaurant, and it's going to use less resources, right? It's going to be more consistent, and we're going to be able to control the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio and the B12, and every parameter of that beef steak is going to be the moisture level, the content, the fat, the marbling is going to be something that is under engineering control. So initially, I don't think it's going to be good. It's going to be inferior to the animal product. But then 40 years from now, once the technology is there, it's going to be a superior engineered product with no bacteria, no parasite. You're going to be able to produce salmon that's better than natural salmon, that doesn't have parasites, that doesn't have heavy metals in it, that is something that is a manufactured product. But at the same time, the human body is going to become a manufactured product. So we're building computers that can recognize a pen, and we're building machines that can pick the pen up. And a human being can pick up an object in a factory and move it from here to there. We're going to build machines that can do that. So every single part, everything that a human being can do is going to be subdivided, is going to be atomized. And we're going to build a machine that can recognize things, a machine that can use language, a machine that can do a hotel reservation, a machine that can pick up an object and rotate it and pick it up and then put it down here, a machine that can put a screw into a hole, a machine that can disassemble something and then reassemble it, a machine that can mop the floors, a machine that can filter your blood to replace your kidneys, a machine that can replace so this is the next generation of technology. And the current technology is a dead end. It's Cold War era, it's 1980s. Except for cell phones and information technology, our energy production system and manufacturing systems are at the same level that they were at 40 years ago. All the Fortune 500 did was they took the factory technology, moved it to China, and had people operating the same machines the Americans were operating, but now pay them enough money to buy 2 bowls of rice a day. And they made a massive fortune on this. Now that's over. It's over. So now they're going to go to fusion reactors and thorium reactors and small modular nuclear reactors, and they're going to go to new energy and geothermal and natural. They're going to go from coal to natural gas, and then from natural, and that's only a stepping stone. To go from coal to natural gas is a stepping stone to go from natural gas to fuel cells powered by natural gas. And that's just a stepping stone, maybe even eventually to hydrogen storage. And they're going to come out with these nanomaterials that store 100 times more hydrogen than what we thought possible before. But then you're going to realize that this was actually developed by the US military in the 1980s during the Cold War. And we've had this technology for 40 years now. And it's so new, it's so new. And you have to realize that everything that you can possibly imagine in the material sciences and information sciences and everything's been done 40 years ago, 60 years ago, 80 years ago. There's nothing really new. But in terms of profitability and industrial tool change, you can't just change an industry that's $100 billion a year and say, okay, we're coal today, natural gas tomorrow. You have to do this through a bunch of legal changes and industry and state investment so anyway, I think that what's going to happen is pretend you're going to build a moon colony. You're going to build factories in space. There's not 1 billion people up there. There's not 1 billion Chinese people on the moon willing to work for $3 an hour, right? So who's going to take screws and make 2mm screws and measure them and take the screw out and put this in? And who's going to assemble the television, right? You don't have labor. So if I want to build, you want to colonize space, you want to build these factories, you want to do mining of asteroids, right? You need labor. And there's not 1 billion Chinese people who are going to work for $3 an hour on this asteroid. So they have a problem. So what are they doing? They're developing robotics because they need a labor force. If they want to do this, they need a labor force. And so we're gonna, and you need a machine that can pick up an object, rotate it, and drop it, or pick up a screw, pick up the screw, and put the screw in the hole. And our technology right now, we can do that, but the robot's $500,000 to do that. So they want that robot to be cheaper than the third world person in Malaysia or Vietnam. So this is what they're going to do, is they're going to fund the development of this technology until it's cheaper than the person in Indonesia. So we're going through an industrial revolution in terms of biotech, cybernetics. We're going to be projecting holographic images onto the eye. You're going to have retinal display. You know, you have this giant VR thing, and every year it's going to get 30% smaller until it's this big. It's going to be 20, 30, 40, 50 grams. It's going to be this giant one. You know, this VR, like I got this 5 kilogram weight tied to my head. It's going to be 30. It's going to decrease in weight 20 to 30% a year, every year until it's 10 grams. And this is what's going to happen. So we have this technology curve where we're going, and you eventually even integrating computers into the human brain, and eventually even simulating human brains in computers, and eventually moving people even from, you have an aircraft, right? And if I can put an electronic human brain in that aircraft, it can accelerate 30, 40, 50 Gs without the pilot blacking out. I can put a brain in a missile that can figure out which target to sink, which target to go after. So you see that why the Air Force is doing this, because a human pilot can do it 3 Gs, 5 Gs, 8 Gs until the blood flow to the brain stops and they knock out, right? But if I could build an electronic brain, if I can take every function that the human brain has and put that into an aircraft, I can accelerate to 50 Gs, 60 Gs, 80 Gs, and I don't have a limit anymore. So so basically a lot of this is being developed for weapons technology and different things like that, but it's also going to be developed for consumer and entertainment technology. And so right now there's Trump's fighting and this fighting and this fighting, and there's two different groups fighting, but what's going to happen, this technology is going to be developed, and it needs to be developed with state support. One group thinks that they're going to bankrupt the Western civilization, buy everything out in privatization, and they're going to make a shitload of money on this. And if they do that, they're going to collapse the US dollar, and they're going to destroy the US empire, and they're going to throw hundreds of millions of people into poverty. They're going to cause a war, and there's going to be a Hitler, and that Hitler is going to seize control of the central bank and print up this $100 trillion to rebuild the country. And if they don't do it, it's either going to be by Hitler or they're going to do it voluntarily. So it doesn't matter what's going to happen. It's going to happen this way or it's going to happen that way. The question is whether they do it next year or whether 30 million people die before they do it. You know, that's the only question for me, because history is pretty predictable.
Who is the they that is going to do all this?
So if you pretend Biden wins, right? Pretend they get rid of Trump, they purge him, they seize control of the media, and they silence the opposition, right? Pretend.
Sorry, I know I've interrupted you more in this interview than any other, right?
Yeah.
I can't say anything about that. Biden is such a strong candidate. He's such a strong. He's the best. Kennedy, Roosevelt, they don't. Washington, Franklin, they don't have a patch on Biden.
So he's a racist. Why would you vote for this
white guy? Synth, I'm joking. He's the weakest candidate I've ever known when I've been interested in politics. You know, he's losing his mind. The poor guy. He's slowly going.
It's Alzheimer's.
Yeah, slowly going, and they're putting him up as president. Are you kidding? He's the weakest candidate that I've ever encountered in all the time I've been watching U.S. politics. He's awful.
If I was a billionaire, and these people came to me and said, "We're going to overthrow Trump and help support us," the only people that would support those people are fucking idiots. They're people that the only people supporting the coup against Trump are people that know that they're going to jail if Trump gets reelected.
Yeah.
So
it's a matter of survival.
So if they win, they're going to give me money. If Trump wins, he's going to give me money. So why do I have to choose a side? The real elite don't care if Trump wins or Biden wins or Clinton wins. They pay both sides off. They're going to win left hand, right hand. Heads or tails, they win. They don't. So when I say I basically mean, to be honest, there's 300,000 people on Earth, and they own everything, all the real estate, all the companies, all the factories, you know, and a lot of them are not really stupid enough to get involved in politics. So you have some people, this billionaire and this Soros and this guy, and they're really heavily involved in this side and that side and whatever. But most of the people don't care. They don't care. They're just running their factory. They're producing their product. I don't care. The reason I care is I see that Western civilization is being annihilated. They're on the verge of collapse, civil war. There's this virus. They sold this to people as we'll get rid of. they destroy the global economy.
Hmm.
There's 1 billion people that are going to starve. There's hundreds of millions of people that are going to be unemployed. The pension funds are going to default because of what's coming. The coronavirus is not the crisis. The crisis has not started yet. They told them, we'll do this thing, we'll get rid of Trump, we'll do this New Deal, everyone's going to make money, it's going to be a V-shaped recovery. They told them that sell your stock here, they crashed the stock market, then the Fed pumped it, they made some money, right? 30%, 60%, they're really happy. But that's not the crisis. The virus is not the crisis. They set in motion the largest debt default in 100 years. The United States right now is like the United States before the Great Depression. There are so many people on unemployment and so many jobs and small businesses that are destroyed that after the election is the biggest economic crisis in human history. And Trump is going to be a dictator. He's going to have the right, if this many people are unemployed and he says, we have to do this, who's going to get you people back to work? Who's going to say no to him? Whatever he says, they're going to do, because what choice do they have? He says he has a solution. So he's going to be the new FDR. And if they can block him and stop it, maybe they can blame him and call him a Herbert Hoover. The next president, the person who is president in the next crisis is the person who controls the Federal Reserve, who controls the printing press. And they're going to be a dictator. Whatever economic plan they put forward, there's going to be no opposition to it, because people are going to be so poor, so desperate just to get back to where they were before the crisis that they'll do anything. So, but anyway, they just did this coup, this virus, this lockdown to get rid of Trump, and they said it's going to be a V-shaped recovery. But what's going to happen is there's a huge portfolio of mortgages that are going to default. There's a huge number of businesses that are going to default. There's a huge group of Fortune 500 that are going to basically fire millions of people because they have to cut their expenses. This is a start, basically, of China is going to do financial wargaming. They're going to try, there's a secret, which is, what happened is China's trying to take back Hong Kong. The US, Australia, Canada said, if you're for Hong Kongese, you can come to our country. We'll give you a passport in 5 years. No questions asked. So 40% of the youth in Hong Kong may immigrate from the country. If 40% of the youth immigrate, the real estate market is dead. HSBC has huge, absolutely huge exposure to the Hong Kong real estate market. HSBC does not belong to the Chinese government. The Chinese government probably will not bail out HSBC. The EU will not bail out HSBC. The US government is not going to, under Trump, with the Fed, will not bail out a foreign bank. This is also why they want to get rid of Trump. They said, oh, well, we'll take back the Fed and we'll bail you out. The reality is, even if they get rid of Trump, they take control of the Fed, they don't have enough money to bail out Deutsche Bank. They don't have enough money. And EU wants to use the coronavirus money to bail out Deutsche Bank, but Deutschland or something, or like the what is that country? Like the Danish or something, say, we want veto authority. Because yeah, we agree that we're going to have an EU bailout, but we don't want you using this money to bail out a German bank. So they're asking for veto authority to make sure that none of bailout money is used to bail out these transnational banks, because Italy doesn't want to bail out Germany, and France doesn't want to bail out Germany, and Germany doesn't want to bail out France, and whatever. So there's an internal fighting within the EU going on. So when these transnational banks defaulted and they were going to go under in 2008, the US government, the Federal Reserve, bailed them out to keep the international financial system going. Now, under Trump, he's not going to do that. This is also why they want him dead. They want him gone, because they think, oh, we'll get in power and it'll be like 2008, but there's not even enough money to bail these people out. It's not going to happen. So they're going to what's going to happen is we're going to have debt defaults. The Hong Kong real estate market's going to go down. HSBC is going to get hammered. The stock market, if it goes down 20%, these banks with their collateral limits wiped out. Basel III accords come in. These banks are insolvent. Either the government will take them over and nationalize the banks, or they will let the banks default, or they will let the banks seize the money of people who deposited money in the banks. So you have $300,000 in HSBC, boom, you don't have $300,000 anymore. They took it. China printed up massive amounts of money to buy gold. The Chinese government prints up money and buys gold in China. They have doesn't cost them money. The Chinese government bought copper, gold, silver, oil. When the oil price crashed, China came in and bought half the world's supply of oil and is stockpiling it for a rainy day. Like, Chinese government bought the milk and milk production of some countries 15 years in advance. They're stockpiling any physical commodity that might have value after the US dollar gets, they dropped their treasury bonds. They got rid of them. You don't, the Chinese government set up a Shanghai physical exchange of gold, and they want to internationalize the RMB. So if you imagine the US government wants to print up all this money, but they don't want the gold price to go up. Because if the US government prints up 10% more money every year, they expand their monetary base 10%, gold should go up 10%, but it doesn't, because they have paper gold. So they can expand the supply of the paper gold through HSBC 10%, so the gold price doesn't go up. So when the US government loses control of the gold, of the paper gold price may be lower than the physical gold price. And this is a disaster. It's really a disaster. So the Chinese government may let HSBC go under. They may even cause the crisis. Because HSBC runs the gold ETF. They run the paper gold market. And when HSBC goes under, the Chinese Communist Party now controls the gold. They control the Shanghai Physical Exchange. The Chinese government will control the international gold market if HSBC were to go under. So what happened is Trump and the Britain, and they said, yeah, immigrate your people over here. We'll bring them in. We'll let them immigrate. And then they leave, the real estate market crashes, HSBC goes under, no one bails them out, the gold ETF goes under, their paper gold market evaporates in the air, and China now has control of the gold market, right? Like you understand, this is a chess game. So a move that they made over here for Hong Kong, 3 moves down, ends up screwing them. And the US response to this is going to be, you're going to see capital controls. You're going to see Britain says you can't send your money to Singapore. Singapore says you can't send your money to Canada. Canada says you can't send your money to the US. This is going to be the biggest freaking train. It's going to be the biggest economic financial crisis in 100 years. So imagine we have a country like New Zealand or Australia, and their borders have been open for 100 years. Their border has not been closed for one day. There has not been a single day in 100 years when you could not get on an aircraft and go to Australia or Canada, right? Then we have this virus, and suddenly the borders closed. If you would have asked me a year ago, I would have told you that's impossible. The border has not been closed in a single day since I was born. They're not even allowed to, under international treaties, they're not even allowed to do it. Unless there's a biological warfare and they're under bioweapon attack, they are not allowed to close their borders under international treaty. And they did it anyways. Can you imagine that? And so we have a rule, and this rule is the way that the system has operated for 100 years. And tomorrow, now it's different, something else. That was how it was before. Here's the new rule. And the new rule is something that no one has even thought about because it hasn't been seen in 60 years. In the international financial system, a transnational bank has not collapsed in how long? And in our life, since World War II, have we ever seen capital controls in the UK where the government says you can't send your money to Canada, you can't send your money to the US, you can only send $220,000 out of your account overseas per month, per month?
I think they dropped them in the late 70s, early 80s. Thatcher's government got rid of exchange controls in the UK.
And now they're going to be back.